Hey everybody, it's Peter. This is the 2024 Kawasaki Z900RS. Now you might be thinking this is the SE model, which used to be the top of the line, which used to be the only way to get this yellow ball paint scheme, but the truth is that the yellow ball paint scheme on the SE isn't the true yellow ball paint scheme. And this one is. This isn't black like the top of the line SE, the bike that I actually own. This is now green, and this is your entry-level model, and it looks fantastic. And if you ask me, someone who already owns a yellow Kawasaki Z900RS SE, this is a way more standout color, a way more kind of just look back and check it out after you park it kind of color. And this is available on the base model, and there's a couple changes to this bike that make it sort of more retro, more standout-ish, and more impressive. So in this review, I'm going to do a complete review of this bike with a few changes for 2024, but if you are into this bike or this type of bike, there's a couple things you should know. Well, first of all, I am about to review the Z900, which is what this is based on, but it's completely non-retro, so that video will be up within minutes of this one being up. And I also own the SE model of this bike, so I'm going to have lots of riding reviews, other stuff. There's already some of that up there. I'm going to follow this bike along. So if you're a fan of this bike, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, and we will cover it in detail. And if you have questions, let me know in the comments section, because we're going to build a video database of all kinds of information on this bike. All right, let's get going with this review. So we're going to talk about what this bike is and what it is not, and that's a key piece, but I do want to thank Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals. If you are in the market for a Kawasaki anywhere in Canada, but especially in New Brunswick, this is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. And while everybody else in Fredericton, New Brunswick has snowmobiles in their showroom, this is motorcycles everywhere I can see. You may notice there's a dirt bike beside me. That's just part of their sold row. There's all kinds of bikes here. So if you're in the mood to buy a motorcycle and you want to get one before the season begins, this is the place. They're all the way like jam-packed in stock, and I'm going to be here several days filming just what's new. All right, let's place this bike in the marketplace, because a lot of people want it to be something that it's not, and it is what it is. So what this bike is a fully modern Z900, but it's tweaked. So of course the frame is tweaked a little bit to accommodate this retro style seat, and we're going to talk about this thing in detail. But the other thing that's worth remembering is that this is not a fully retro bike like something like the W800. This is a modern bike. It's got a monoshock, not the dual shocks here. The ride and feel of this bike is fully modern, but still very retro-like in the way it presents itself. So what I mean by that is you have modern brakes, modern handling, very modern power. We're gonna talk about all of that, but you have a retro look overall. It's not designed to be the old style bike that gives you the old style ride. What it's designed to be is basically a fully modern sport bike, essentially, and we'll talk about what's sporty and what's not on it, but it's also designed to offer you comfort and tremendous style. It's the kind of bike that can blend in with people who like cruisers, people who like sport bikes, and everywhere in between. So there are also some key tweaks between this and the Z900. We're going to talk about that in this video and in my next video, where we introduce the Z900, which of course is the basics of this, but it has TFT display and it's a fully modern bike with a few different tweaks in software and a whole bunch of areas. So let's start at the front wheel, work our way back through this bike, and really get in depth. So we're going to start here at the front wheel of this bike, and what you see is a couple cool things. So remember, this one has that yellow ball, the traditional yellow ball paint scheme. We'll talk about that as we get a little bit closer in, but you may be able to see it right now. This is green here instead of black, so that's one of the key differences. But you also have some differences here between this and the Z900. This is actually the more sporty front end, which will surprise a lot of people. When you see that Z900, it looks like the very modern sport bike type naked bike, whereas this one is, it has better brakes. So let's first talk about what we have here. First of all, you've got tires, you've got the rim here is a silver on the edge, black throughs there, and they have blacked out and chromed out, or brighted out kind of spokes in here. So the idea is it's supposed to look like a spoked wheel in behind. It kind of sets a cool tone with the black and the bright up close. It is something that does not translate to camera at all. Now on my Z900RS SE, which is identical to the 2024, this piece here is a blacked out piece. Here it's a nice textured metal. It probably feels plasticky, but it feels metally to the touch. It's got some texture there to it, and it adds some color in here. And then we need to talk about the brakes. You can see right off the bat, you've got heavily ventilated dual brakes, 300 millimeters across there, and then you have the radial mount brakes. This radial mount is what you see on super sport bikes, and it's what you get standard on this entry-level Z900RS, but you don't get this standard on the entry-level Z900. So you actually have different brakes or different front brakes on that bike than you do on this bike. So this is the sportier unit. You also have fully adjustable suspension here. You can see some adjustment here. We'll show you the rest of the adjustments up top. Upside down forks here, so you have less unsprung weight than you would on for instance, a retro bike, and a lot of braking power. So upside down forks give you more stiffness up top. So what you're ending up with is something that has a retro look to it, but also a very modern look. Now you can make the argument that these brakes are more stylish, and that's part of why they're on this bike, but they do give you the benefit of having a little bit more stiffness in there as well. So technically a more sporty package here than even the Z900. Let's keep moving our way back through the bike. All right, so let's talk about the heart of this bike is the engine. And there's a few things here that are kind of cool. First of all, you have this sort of traditional air-cooled look. You've got the chrome-looked pipe, 4-into-1 type pipe down there. You've got a really traditional style engine, and it harkens back to the original. What you don't have is the exact same tune as the Z900. Now, a lot of people will complain about this, but think about what you're doing with this bike. I've been in the automotive industry for a long time. I've driven race-prepped cars on the road, and I can tell you they're terrible on the road. What this is basically a full-on road sport bike. So RS is standing for retro sport, but you could also consider it to be like a road sport bike. And what that means is this engine is actually detuned from peak horsepower from the Z900. The Z900 is rumored to make around 127 or so horsepower. This one makes around 109, 111, depending on what spec you look at. For the wheel, you'll see wheel horsepower numbers that are lower than that. But apples to apples comparison, that's what you're kind of looking at. So people say, okay, this is a detuned engine, but it's not really detuned, it's more retuned. So what this does is it has peak torque, which is basically the same as the Z900, but the peak torque is reached 1,000 RPM lower. So you have torque down lower in the power band. So unless you're running full on red line, you actually are in a bigger power band in the middle of the revs than you would be in the Z900. That makes this thing feel like it has power absolutely everywhere. The other thing this bike does that's kind of interesting is it actually has a lower first gear. That lower first gear makes it torquey off the line, and it has a taller sixth gear. That taller sixth gear gives you a little bit more relaxed highway cruising. And again, with the power this bike has, none of that's a problem. You've got acceleration in any gear. You've got a 12% heavier flywheel, so again, a little bit smoother transition between your shifts and that kind of thing. But what you have here is an engine that is perfectly tuned for a sport bike for the road. You know, it may not be the perfect tune for a track, but it really gives you the power on the road. And that, again, is probably where this buyer is probably looking to spend most of their time. I know, again, I bought the same bike. That's where I spend my time. And it really is a well-tuned bike for the road. Moving our way back through this bike, you're going to see something else with the name back in it. Horizontal backlink rear suspension. What that means is that the same way that the ZX-10 is basically set up with that horizontal backlink rear suspension, that true super sport bike, is the design of this suspension here. What that does is it moves your weight centralized and sort of forward, lower in the bike, and it gives you a single shock, which is going to give you more consistent performance. Now, the SE model that I have has remote preload adjustment and an Ohlins shock, which has a little adjuster up here. This one doesn't have that remote preload adjustment, but it is still somewhat adjustable. You have your preload adjustment in there. So you still are able to sort of tweak this ride to be exactly what you need. The other reason I want to show you this exact view is I can tell you right now that this color is not translating perfectly on camera, but it is showing that it is green. Much nicer green in person than I'm seeing on camera here. Maybe that'll switch a tiny bit in editing, but either way, you're not going to see the perfect color scheme here. What's cool about this too is mine has sort of a more modern Z900RS label here. This is the more traditional 900 looking double overhead camshaft label on there. So again, a little bit more of a retro badge in there, and the green. Now, why is it green? Because the original model actually had this green with the yellow ball, not the black like the SE model. So a lot of reviewers have been saying, oh, that black harkens back to the original. The original model was green. We're gonna move up the tank, look at that before we move our way back around the bike now. So I don't normally film just the tank of the bike, but this is part of the styling here, and you can't really see it here, but there's a Z logo in the yellow paint scheme there. That's on all of these with this same style paint scheme. Now my bike, again, is the black with the gold here. I believe the yellow is the same color. It's got a metallic kind of look to it that you can see in the sunshine. You can't see here. I'll show you a little bit more of the green paint as we move along the bike here. There is a metallic there as well. But the difference between this and the SE is you have the retro badging as standard. This is not an accessory. Now you can get the accessory, this badging as an accessory and add it to the other bikes if you wanted to, take off the more modern logo. So of course modern Kawasaki uses a slightly different font. If you get the SE model, it's going to be yellow here, black here with the modern Kawasaki logo. This one here is fully retro. The other difference with the SE model is this panel right here. On this one it is a silver plastic panel. On the other one it is a more black plastic panel. So there are quite a few differences identifying this, and maybe we'll keep going through here. You have a little bit more bright silver work on the side of the rad there. So a couple other things, again, that bright silver kind of matches that bright silver there. So there are some tweaks here to the sort of entry-level Z900 that you don't have on the SE that are really making it more of a retro style bike. Let's look at one other thing that is new, not just on this paint scheme, but on this bike for 2024 as we move back on the bike. So taking a look at the seat here, you do have a fairly firm but well-positioned, well-padded seat. This is a very comfortable seat for me. Now again, seat comfort is very personal. Some people will tell you they want to swap out the seat if you wanted to. There's aftermarket options that really keep that retro look. But I've driven thousands of kilometers on this seat. It is very comfortable for me, and it is the same seat here as it would be on mine. You have that sort of traditional looking strap here. What's interesting is this is sort of the tie down that you have. There's also a tie down here on the reflector area, but this piece here is now standard. So what I did when I put a center stand on my bike is I mounted the full passenger grab rail, which comes around here, goes up around the back seat there. This is just, I can't remember what it's called there, but the traditional sort of hand grips there. If you were to put a center stand on this bike, you already have these on here, so you can put it up, but it does give you an extra piece to tie down luggage, not just through here or there, but actually to have something here. I guess it could be used as a passenger handhold, but to me it's too low to do that comfortably. You're still gonna have your passenger holding the rider if that's what they wanna do. But the big thing it does, and this is a subtle thing, is it adds a little bit of extra bling at the back, gives it that retro chrome look that kind of ties into that chrome look exhaust that's down there as well. So I kind of like adding just a touch of chrome back here, because it's one of those things where it's the subtleties that make bikes stand out. And again, this is just a little subtlety that makes it stand out. You don't know why it looks good, but it's one of those pieces like this that makes it stand out, makes it look pretty cool. So you still have that duckbill rear taillight here. It is an LED taillight. It wraps around here. It's almost got a little bit of a spoiler look at the very, very top there. You can kind of feel it as much as see it. But yeah, the paint again, inside here, it's going to look fairly dark, almost black up top. We'll show you on the tank how it's not black. It is actually green. And then we'll move around to controls, dash, adjustable suspension, a few other things. All right, so one thing I want you to remember as we take a look at the tank here before we move too far, I am filming indoors. You can see sort of the lighting for indoors reflecting off this. The paintwork is absolutely gorgeous on this. The yellow is metallic and it will show on outdoors. The green, forget the color. The color's not going to match the same on camera. It's close, but it's not the same. But you can see there's a deep metallic look to this, and it really does stand out in person. So we'll kind of come back full wide angle. You can see where we're looking at. We're going to step in bit by bit by bit. There's level 1, level 2, all the way to level 3 here. And you can really sort of see that metallic look to it. Really deep, really green. Again, color's not matching on camera, but really cool look. All right, let's move to controls and the dash. All right, so one of the cool things is I've been saying Z900 for a reason. I'm not filming in the United States, I'm filming here in Canada. And when you turn this thing on, you can see the full sweep here, you can see the full dash here. But one of the things us Canadians get that I actually like better than the Americans is we don't have the dual speedometer in here with kilometers an hour and miles per hour. Without having that second row of gauges, it's just a cleaner look. So we only get kilometers an hour. You're gonna have to do your conversions if you actually cross the border from Canada, but you do have a nice clean look. Now this dash is actually brilliant. One of the coolest things about this bike is when you're riding it, although it feels like a fully modern sport bike, you still have all your brain telling you that it's a fully retro bike because you're seeing these retro gauges and that kind of thing. And this is the font, every piece about it is crystal clear. It reminds me of the older bikes. You got a red line that revs up to 10,000 RPM. So you have that fully modern sport bike. I can tell you right now, driving from 2,000 RPM, you have tons of torque. 3,000 to 4,000 RPM, from 4,000 to 8,000 RPM, this bike is an absolute monster. It's got so much torque, a lot of horsepower, and you can rev it right up to 9,500 RPM for that peak horsepower, right up to 10,000 RPM red line. So you've got a ton of power in here. and you get to sort of watch things happen on the gauges like you would on the retro bikes, and it really does kind of put you back into a retro kind of feeling here. But I love what they do with this dash in between. Some people say this is harder to read. I don't have a tinted visor and find it not hard to read at all. I think there is an issue with polarized sunglasses. If you have your polarized sunglasses on, for me, and I tilt my head this way, it's harder to read. Tilt my head the other way, it's easy to read. So one thing to keep in mind is just maybe play with a different pair of sunglasses if you're finding this hard to read. I don't think it's that bad on here. Now you've got some controls down here. We've got an odometer right there. You've got trip A, trip B. You've got kilometers per liter. You could do liters per 100 kilometers. You could do miles per gallon. You could do miles per gallon UK. So there's lots of ways to read your fuel efficiency, but that would be your instant readout right there. You have your average readout there, and then you have your range. Once you get riding a little bit on this, it'll tell you how much kilometers you have till empty. It's a guess based on how you have been driving, but again, it's a nice feature to have along with your fuel gauge. So you can see the fuel gauge right now, not fully empty actually. It's a bunch of bars up to full. This little E, when it gets really close to empty, will actually start flashing that last bar there. So you've still got a little bit to go before you're really fully empty, and then your temperature gauge is on the right side there as well. Traction control is level 1, level 2, or off, so technically 3 levels of traction control, but you have that there, and then a gear position indicator and a clock in there, as well as some warning lights and that kind of thing up top. Gear position indicator is super nice to have. I know it's a retro bike, but trust me, even if you've driven up or grown up driving bikes without gear position indicators, it is just so nice to have that, just at a glance to see what gear you're in. Just really kind of, allows you to pick the perfect gear coming into a corner, coming out of a corner. Just sets you up really well. All right, let's take a look at the top of the suspension, because this is fully adjustable modern suspension. All right, so I'm taking a look at the top of the left side fork tube. You could look at the right side fork tube, it'd be the exact same here, but you can see the adjustments in there. One of the really nice things about this bike is you do have adjustable suspension. When you get on this bike, it's gonna be a fairly firm ride. Again, it's designed to be a sport bike, but having the ability to adjust the suspension, you can customize it up to be just yours. It's a really key piece to owning this bike, to make it handle well, but also to make it sort of the ride and the comfort that you want. All right, let's take a look at the controls. All right, before we show you the controls right here, I do want to show you this is your flash to pass, but really what I want to show you is right here. This is a 5-position adjustable clutch lever, and you also have a 6-position adjustable brake lever on the other side. So what you have here, if you look at this from the angle it's shooting at, you can see my first knuckle here is kind of where that lines up right now. It's at number 5. We're going to go from number 5 to number 1 by pushing that out like that, and now you can see it's basically almost at my first knuckle there. So it goes from here right up to there. The clutch lever is adjustable. Now, a lot of people make a big deal about this because they say, oh, it fits different size hands. And while that is true, what it also does is it can change where that grab point is on the clutch. So not only do you have the ability to fit different hands, you can sort of fit it to where you want that grab point to be. That's a really nice feature on the adjustable clutch. Same sort of thing with the adjustable brake, which on the other side, which allows you to have that brake exactly where you want it and that feel exactly where you want it, both for bigger hands, larger hands, but also to have that feel. So again, we showed you this. We're going to now move on to this side over here. So I probably should have pointed out this is also a slipper and assist clutch. What that means is it's a very light clutch pull. It also allows you to do an aggressive downshift and to, instead of letting the rear wheel slip, it'll let the clutch slip. Again, it's brought in for racing. It also makes it easier to drive. It's a great system. It's a high-end sport bike thing. It also works great for beginner riders, but you're probably not a beginner rider if you're riding this bike. Moving on to the controls that you have here. We showed you the trigger right there by my finger, which is flashing your high beams. You do have an LED headlight standard on this. It is the traditional round style, but it's a modern LED headlight. You have high beam and low beam right there, signals right there, and press in, and you've got the horn. And then you do have hazard lights. Very, very nice to have hazard lights on a modern bike. Just if you stop somewhere, you got a little bit extra visibility. And then as I was cycling through the odometer, the fuel efficiency, that kind of thing, up moves you up through that system, down moves you down through that system, but you also have the ability to select your traction control. So that's really what this button does. Now this particular bike is different than mine. I added the heated grips accessory here. What this does is moves this over, puts an extra button in there for Kawasaki heated grips. So you have the option of doing that from the Kawasaki accessories if you didn't want it to be aftermarket. The Kawasaki ones look a little cleaner in here. We can talk about the heated grips in a different video, but you do have the option of getting that on this bike if you wanted to. The other nice thing here is you have that nice big chrome handlebar, and that allows you to mount all of your accessories if you wanted to. There is a USB power port underneath the seat on this bike. I should say that I haven't checked this bike yet, but most of them, they have it under the seat. So you can run power underneath the tank and up to here if you wanted a sort of a clean power setting there to put your phone or something on there. I like the clean look and don't like running my phone up there, but that's sort of something worth pointing out. You do have the ability to add the accessories easily, having that round handlebar instead of clip-ons. One of the things we didn't show you on this bike yet is the riding position. So this is the base model RS. Now the RS has this, and the SE are going to share a riding position. Even though there's different suspension, there's slightly differently tuned front suspension and a different rear shock, it's going to share this riding position with the SE and this. The Cafe model does have a slightly different hand grip. You can look that up on my channel and you can see that it's a little bit more in and lower. But again, riding position on this exact bike, we'll do the Cafe as it comes in, is very comfortable. First thing you're going to notice is it's a little bit of a wider tank than some of the other bikes that are out there. It's not going to affect you for comfort in any way. It's going to be nice and good. You can kind of hug your legs against it, still have a good grip against it, but you've got that cool retro feeling. One of the coolest things about sitting on this bike is modern powertrain that responds properly the way you want it to, modern brakes, modern everything else, everything responds well. Your eyes are telling you everything's retro, from the round mirrors to the tank to the gauges, everything's retro, but it has that. It's almost like riding a retro bike, but in a dream, a perfectly tuned old retro bike. That's what this really is. In 2024, they've kind of knocked some of the kinks out of this. I know on my 2022, some people had complained about the twitchy throttle. I don't have that problem at all on my 2022. So you've really kind of worked out the kinks of this bike. But overall, as a riding position, what this does is it makes it a very versatile bike. It is full sport bike underneath, full, proper modern sport bike components. So you have that power. You also have the traditional upright seating position, and then you can convert it. If you wanted to put a windshield on this, you could. If you wanted to put side bags on this, you could. This style works well with multiple sort of packages of rear luggage and that kind of thing. So you can have this as a cruise around town, cool looking bike, but you could do it up as a touring bike. You could have it as a, around town bike, country road bike, whatever you want to be. You could take it to the racetrack too. There are better bikes for the racetrack than this, but you've got a whole lot of power in this thing. So you could absolutely do that. It really is a versatile bike, but the big thing is you have this comfortable riding position. The gauges here, I don't know if they're aerodynamically designed, but there is sort of a bulbousness to them, and that does provide clean air to you. So although you're getting the full air, unlike a bike with a windshield, there's no buffeting, which most windshields give you some sort of buffeting. So it's a nice clean air. Get yourself a good helmet, grab some earplugs if you need, and it's a very fun, kind of serene ride. The other thing worth mentioning on this bike is the exhaust itself is Kawasaki sound tuned. So what they've done is they've tuned the intake and exhaust sound to really sound good. It's hard to pick up on a lot of videos. You'll have plenty of other videos to show you sound of this bike, but you will notice when you're driving it that it really does sound nice. And again, the feeling, the sound, the sight lines, everything else really makes it feel like a retro bike with a perfectly tuned retro bike that is modern. So that's what this bike brings you. Now let's talk about who this bike is for. So to me, there's some confusion about who this bike is for. A lot of people kind of focus on the 1972 version of this bike and say, oh, if you remember that when you were a teenager, then this is your bike. I don't remember that. I wasn't even born in 1972, not even close. So why did I buy this bike? To me, what this is a really comfortable, really stylish, but more upright style sport bike that gives you that traditional motorcycle feel. So it doesn't have a quick shifter, it doesn't have cruise control, it doesn't have a number of things that a number of bikes in this 900cc class have. But to me, in a world where everything is adding more, giving you technology, this adds the perfect amount of tech in that you have a really well-tuned engine that's going to be reliable. It's actually got lower compression ratio than the regular Z900. You've got the torque where you want it. You've got power everywhere. Comfortable seat for not just yourself and a passenger. You can equip it up with luggage if you wanted to. This is a really versatile bike for a lot of people if you want to stay on the streets and have something that's incredibly powerful, sounds great, and gives you that true motorcycle feeling. And that's one of the things that I think changes in some of these modern bikes. You get these kind of funky looking styling bikes. You get something that's really peaky up at the top power band so that when they advertise it, they can say, hey, we've got more peak power than our competitors, that kind of thing. This thing isn't going out for a win on the spreadsheet or on a magazine, spec sheet. This thing wins in its everyday riding. This is the style and type and feel of bike that a lot of riders fell in love with. And I think some of that is missing. Some of the newer bikes, they don't have that same soul, that same feeling the same way. So why do I love this bike? Why did I buy the top end version of this bike? I bought it because it's an amazing riding bike for the type of riding that I do. Very sporty, capable of long drives, great country road, great city bike, great everything bike that's also very comfortable. Now, I bought the SE model. That adds some gold color shocks, gold wheels. It adds the rear Ohlins shock, the Brembo brakes. This is a far better buy than that bike. There's no question about it. You don't need Ohlins suspension or Brembo brakes. I like them, I appreciate them, I don't regret buying them, but you're getting a whole lot of that in this bike, including now this yellow ball paint scheme, which is the true yellow ball paint scheme with the green and black retro style looks. To me, they've upped their value quotient by giving you sort of that true paint scheme, adding the little extra bars in here, and giving you a base model with a little bit more than you've had in the past. So to me, this is probably the value bike to get. Now, should you get the SE? If you can afford it, if you can appreciate that great suspension, there is a difference in suspension. If you like the gold wheels and you want Brembo brakes, just that really precise feel with Brembo brakes and the braided lines, then yeah, go for the SE. I love that as well. But to me, the value in the RS lineup is right here in this bike. So that's my review of the 2024 Z900RS. Of course, if you're American, it would be Z900RS, but we're filming a Canadian bike here in Canada. I'm going to review the Z900 just now, right next, as soon as I'm done this bike. So we're gonna have a real good comparison between the fully modern and the retro modern bike coming up. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out that video as well if you're curious about that. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.